Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really getting into something fundamental. It's about how perspective, how you see things, determines success or, well, stagnation in leadership. We're looking closely at this material called the lens of fear versus the lens of faith.
Yeah. And our mission today really is to get specific. We want to unpack the psychological differences, the strategic differences between tackling big challenges through fear versus through faith, and importantly, give you, the listener, a practical way to actually shift that perspective.
Right, because the source material talks about this feeling. I think every leader knows it. That kind of 3.00 a.m. moment, uncertainty hits, your mind races, and you just freeze. Why does that happen to some, while others seem to find clarity?
And the source argues it's not really about luck or even raw talent.
Mhm.
It comes down to the lens. Which one are you looking through?
The core idea seems to be that fear acts like a silent saboteur. It narrows your vision, twists reality, kills creativity, and just paralyzes you.
Exactly. Whereas faith, well, faith does the opposite. It expands your vision. It's grounded in conviction, in courage, and it helps you see opportunities where, frankly, others just see roadblocks.
And you look around today, things change so fast. Industries get turned upside down seemingly overnight. This isn't just theory, is it? There's a real urgency here.
Absolutely. Relying on those old, linear, maybe fear-based ways of thinking, they just don't cut it anymore. The pace is too fast. Agility, courage, that's what's needed now. Choosing the wrong lens isn't just a mistake. It could mean being left behind entirely.
Okay, so let's dig into this lens of fear first. The material compares it to like a funhouse mirror, something that warps what you see.
Well, it's partly biological. Fear is this ancient survival thing. Fight, flight, or freeze. Super helpful if, I don't know, a bear jumps out at you.
Right, helpful then.
But for modern leadership challenges, market shifts, tough emails, quarterly reports, that same response becomes, well, pretty unhelpful. Your brain gets kind of hijacked by the amygdala.
Okay, amygdala hijack. For someone running a team or a company, why does that matter? What does that actually look like in terms of strategy?
It basically short circuits your higher thinking. Your rational brain takes a backseat. And strategically, this leads to, well, three big problems. First, tunnel vision. You only see the threat right in front of you. You miss opportunities, creative solutions just off to the side.
And then you start looking for things to prove you were right to panic.
That's the second one, confirmation bias.
Yeah.
You actively search for data that confirms your fear. If you're worried about finances, suddenly every report looks like bad news.
Uh-huh.
And the third distortion, which is just deadly for growth, is creativity shutdown. Your prefrontal cortex, the bit you need for complex problem solving, for innovation, it just kind of goes offline when you're chronically stressed. Fear squeezes out the mental space needed for new ideas.
So that physiological reaction fuels these common leadership fears we all recognize, right? Fear of failing, fear of what others think, losing market share, fear of the unknown, even just feeling inadequate.
Right. And this is where the source takes a really interesting turn. It moves beyond just the psychology and looks at the underlying belief system, spiritual foundation, if you like, that allows fear to take root and dominate.
That connection is important. How do we get from the amygdala, the brain science, to this deeper sort of spiritual battleground idea?
Well, the source suggests that chronic fear in leadership isn't just stress. It's fundamentally about control. It's like this posture of the heart, as they put it, that says, look, I have to be in control because I can't fully trust things will work out otherwise. It replaces faith, that conviction, with just human effort and limitation. You're operating from a place that deep down doesn't trust anything beyond what you can personally manage.
That makes a lot of sense. Fear fills the space where trust should be. Okay, let's make the pivot then. Let's talk about the lens of faith. First off, what is it not? Because people might get the wrong idea.
Good point. It's definitely not blind optimism. It's not being reckless, just hoping for the best without doing your homework. And it's not like you suddenly stop feeling fear altogether. The source is clear. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's taking action despite the fear.
Action in the presence of fear.
Okay. So real faith in this context is choosing to act based on clarity, on conviction, even when your circumstances feel, frankly, terrifying.
So actively, what does that look like? On a practical level, maybe a tough Monday morning.
It's that deliberate choice. You choose to look beyond the immediate problem, the constraints. You choose to see possibility, to spot opportunities where everyone else just sees risk. It gives you this anchor, this foundational truth, when everything else feels like it's shifting constantly.
And this gives leaders what the source calls the perspective advantage. That clarity, that courage, the creative spark, it lets you see potential where others see only problems.
Yeah, and there's a great illustration of this. Think about two different teams looking at the same big, risky decision, maybe a strategic acquisition. Both teams see the facts. High debt, integration challenges, tough market, the giants and the fortified cities.
Okay, same data.
Same data, totally different interpretation. The fear-driven team, they focus only on how huge the challenges are. Their report says things like, we're too small, it costs too much, we'll look like grasshoppers next to this problem. They basically project their own fears onto the situation. They edit out any possibility of success.
That sounds exactly like the story of the 12 spies in the Bible in Numbers. 10 of them came back terrified by what they saw.
Exactly. While the other two, Joshua and Caleb, they saw the same giants, the same fortified cities. But through their lens of faith, their report was completely different. We should definitely go take it. We can certainly do it. They'll be our bread. The problem was huge, yes, but their conviction, their belief in a bigger possibility was even bigger. It dwarfed the problem.
Okay, let's bring that into a modern context. The source mentions a corporate crisis scenario, like a massive product recall that could seriously damage the company.
Right. The leader operating from fear, their first instinct is probably self-preservation, damage control. Maybe even try to hide the full extent of the problem to protect the stock price, right? Which often leads to these short-sighted decisions that kill trust long-term.
Okay, makes sense. So how does the faith-driven leader handle that same recall?
Well, their priority shifts. It's about transparency, integrity, even when it hurts. They see the crisis not just as a disaster, but as a crucible, an opportunity to refine things, to show what the company truly stands for. They lead the recovery with conviction, believing their values will see them through, even if it's financially painful in the short run. They actually use the crisis to build a stronger, more resilient culture.
That's a powerful contrast. But, moving from fear to faith isn't always a straight line. The source warns about falling into ditches on either side.
Yeah, two big pitfalls. Pitfall number one is crippling fear that cleverly disguises itself as being prudent or responsible. This is where you get analysis paralysis. You need more data, and more data, you stick rigidly to how we've always done it, and you avoid taking necessary risks because there's no 100% guarantee.
Hang on, though. Isn't prudence a virtue in leadership? How do you tell the difference between being wisely cautious and just being paralyzed by fear?
That's a great question. It comes down to the motive and the outcome. Crippling fear is motivated by avoidance. Prudence is motivated by effective engagement. Think about that parable of the servant with one talent. He didn't just bury it because he was lazy. He said, I was afraid. His prudence, his risk avoidance, was actually judged as faithlessness. Prudence assesses risk to manage it so you can act. Fear assesses risk to find an excuse not to act.
Okay, that distinction, motive, and outcome is really helpful. What's the second tip?
That's the opposite extreme. Reckless faith, which often looks like boldness, but is actually presumption. This is where leaders make impulsive moves, ignore wise advice. Proverbs warns against that they skip due diligence or the kind of spiritualize incompetence, blaming bad outcomes on testing faith rather than poor planning.
Like quoting scripture to justify jumping off a cliff, which is what Satan tempted Jesus with, right? And Jesus said, basically, don't test God.
Precisely. Faith is trust, presumption is making demands. So the balance we're aiming for is what the source calls wise and courageous faith. And the model for this, Nehemiah is a fantastic example. He prayed like crazy, yes, but he also planned meticulously. He got the permits, the letters of safe passage. He personally inspected the walls at night to assess the risk.
Right. He didn't just pray for the walls to rebuild themselves.
Not at all. And when opposition arose, his response was integrated. He said, we prayed to our God, and we posted a guard day and night, both hand.
That's it. Deep trust plus smart, practical action.
That's the gold standard, especially when things are volatile. You trust completely, and you engage intelligently with the reality you're facing. Pray like it all depends on God. Plan like it all depends on you.
Okay, this is great context, but let's get really practical now. For the leader listening who feels that pressure, that fear right now, how do they actually apply this? Let's walk through the fear to faith framework.
All right, it's a three-step process meant to be repeatable. Step one, absolutely crucial, identify and name the fear. You have to get specific. Move away from that vague cloud of anxiety.
Why is being specific so important here?
Because vagueness is where fear hides and grows. Saying, I'm worried about the future is paralyzing. Saying, I'm specifically afraid we'll lose our biggest client because of X, Y, and Z. Okay, now that's something you can actually grapple with. Naming the fear drags it into the light. It gives you clarity.
Okay, name the specific fear. Got it. Step two.
Step two is Interrogate the fear with truth. This is the reframing part. You take that specific fear you named and you actively challenge it. A good way is like a mental T-chart.
Okay, T-chart, how does that work?
On one side, you write the lie the fear lens is telling you. For example, this market downturn means we're definitely going bankrupt. On the other side, you write the corresponding truth drawn from your conviction from reality. Like, market downturns are cyclical. We have strong fundamentals, a loyal team, and options A, B, and C we can explore to navigate this. You're consciously replacing the fear-based distortion with a faith-based reality check.
Replacing the lie with the truth makes sense. And then step 3 has to be about doing something, right?
Absolutely. Faith requires action. Step 3 is set bold, wise next steps. You take that reframed truth and you translate it into concrete, measurable action. But notice the words, bold and wise.
So not reckless, but not timid either.
Exactly. Wise means you mitigate the real risks. Maybe you launch a pilot project instead of betting the whole farm. You do your homework. Bold means you actually take the step, even though it feels risky. You don't just think about it. Maybe it's scheduling that really difficult conversation you've been avoiding, but doing it with a clear plan.
Okay, identify, interrogate, act. But here's the big one. What if you do all that? You name the fear, you reframe it, you take a bold, wise step, and it still doesn't work out. The project fails, the client leaves anyway. Doesn't that just prove the fear was right?
Ah, yes. That's the ultimate test of which lens you're truly using.
Okay.
And this is where we have to redefine failure. The goal of the face lens isn't actually to guarantee everything turns out exactly how you want, materially speaking. It's not some magic formula for success.
So what is the goal then?
The goal is to guarantee God's presence and purpose in the outcome, whatever it is. Success, seen through this lens, is measured by your faithfulness. Did you act with integrity based on your conviction? Did you obey what you felt called to do? It's not just about the bottom line. Failure then becomes, well, not an endpoint, but data, a lesson. It builds character, it refines strategy, but it doesn't define your worth or prove your inadequacy.
That shift in defining success and failure is huge, and it clearly impacts the leader personally. But what about the wider team, the organization?
Oh, it's absolutely critical for the culture. Because perspective is contagious. A leader operating from fear, that trickles down. You get a culture where people cover their mistakes, they avoid taking risks, innovation just dies because everyone's afraid to fail.
Right.
But a leader operating from that wise and courageous faith, they create a very different environment, one where people feel safe to try things, where calculated risks are okay, where mistakes are seen as learning opportunities. You get resilience, innovation, courage spreading through the team.
So for everyone listening, it really comes down to this choice, doesn't it? Your perspective is arguably your most powerful leadership tool. Will you default to that familiar, maybe distorting lens of fear, or will you deliberately choose the sharpened, clearer lens of faith?
And maybe one final thought on this, that story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego facing the furnace. Their faith wasn't just wishful thinking. They were convinced God could save them. But the core of their faith, the real power, was in what they said next. But even if he does not, we still won't bow down.
Wow. Yeah, that's commitment regardless of the outcome. That's resilient leadership. So the challenge for you listening is, which story do you want your leadership to tell? One paralyzed by fear of the giants, or one that saw the possibility, acted with wise courage, even if it meant walking through some fire? Maybe start small. Take one challenge this week and just apply step 1. Name the specific fear. See where it leads.